Just want to remind you guys, this episode is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.
What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Derek and Cody, with you as always. And guys, we're breaking down another position group here for the Indianapolis Colts before training camp starts. And we're talking about the cornerback room. There's been a lot of chat with this group. And, there's been a lot of turnover. There's been a lot of movement. And there's been some new additions to this group. So we're here to discuss all of it. But Cody, I think the first one that we have to talk about is obviously the newcomer, and that is Charvarius Ward. Charvarius Ward was one of the top free agent people on the free agent list this offseason. A lot of people trying to get Charvarius Ward in the building. And we even heard the story that Ward was, going to sign with the Saints originally. That was where he was originally planning on going. And then Ballard, because we've seen Ballard this offseason be a lot more aggressive, and he came in with a last-second offer to Charvarius Ward, and Ward couldn't turn it down, ended up coming to Indianapolis instead. Obviously didn't play a ton in 2024 because of extenuating circumstances and whatnot. But, Cody, how do you feel with our Charvarius Ward, who says he is eager to come here and prove to people that he still has a lot left in the tank and that his best football is still to come?
Well, first off, I like what you said about, Ballard actually doing what it takes to get good players in the building, because it feels like it's been a while. I mean, that was the biggest signing that Chris Ballard's ever made in free agency, bar none. It wasn't even close. Like, that was a huge signing for Chris Ballard, and honestly, a huge step for him, and he doesn't do that a lot. So you obviously see with the contract how the Colts feel about Charvarius Ward and his abilities, but just from a player standpoint, Derek, I mean, I'm excited. I'm very excited to have Charvarius Ward on this roster in this defense. I mean, let's be honest, the Colts haven't had a true lockdown corner since Vontae Davis back in, I think it was 2015 when he was at his peak. So it's been quite a while since the Colts have had a lockdown corner. They've always kind of had, decent corners at times, but they've never had the guy that can go and shadow receivers, follow guys around. Like, this is a whole different type of player that the Colts have here in Charvarius Ward. So it's great to see, man. It's great to see them finally, do what it takes to get a really good player. And, like you said, all the situation last year with his daughter and all that stuff, seems like that is now, all that stuff is behind him. Obviously it's hard. It was a really tough thing for him, but it seems like he's moving forward and is in a really good headspace, which you'd love to hear that. So, yeah, from a player standpoint, when he was fully locked in, you saw what he was capable of in 2023. I mean, a first-team All-Pro. I mean, one of, if not the best corners in football that year. So if he can get back even to 70, 80% of that, you're going to be pretty happy with the result of that. If he can be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro player, that changes everything on your defense. I mean, it really does. Be able to have at least half the field covered up by Charvarius Ward, that is huge. That is absolutely massive for this defense. And, in a group with a lot of young guys, outside of Kenny Moore, like a lot of young players in this room. I mean, and we'll talk about some of those young players, but to have a true veteran, I mean, Derek, how valuable is that for guys like Jaylen Jones, JuJu Brents, just to name a few, some of these other young guys, Justin Wally, all these guys that you're bringing in that are not still in their first contracts with the team. Yeah. Like, how valuable is it to be able to be in the back pocket of somebody like a Charvarius Ward who has seen it, who has, been in a Super Bowl, who has done things and knows what it takes to win and play football at the highest level.
Yep.
How valuable is that for this young defensive back room and this young corner room in general?
Yeah, no doubt. It definitely provides a lot for this group. I mean, both from a knowledge standpoint and, like you said, just a guy that, can take on the tasks that the defensive coordinator is asking him to do a lot better than what we have had it recently. And I will give credit to one guy that you didn't mention. Oh, I don't want you to get too roasted in the comments, or both of us, for not mentioning his name. Stephon Gilmore was probably the last guy that we have had before, like you said, Vontae Davis, that was able to lock down any.
But the reality was that Stephon Gilmore was in his mid-30s, right?
And he wasn't the player for a year. It wasn't for very long. But obviously, yeah, he was locked down when he was here. But obviously, you have Charvarius Ward here now for at least the foreseeable future. Turned 29 this year. So, he's still in his 20s, still has the ability to put together a lot of great things. I don't think there's any much wear and tear on him right now. But yeah, it'll be great. I do wonder how Lou Anarumo is going to use him on the defense. Again, we've never really been told specifically how he's going to be utilized, but there's always been the throw out that, like you said, can he travel around the field and guard the number one wide receiver?
I believe they've already communicated that, like he's going to do that. Okay. I'm pretty sure they've already said that.
I've heard them suggest the idea that they would do that. I don't know if it's ever been confirmed of it, but I have heard them say they've entertained the idea of doing that, which they definitely should. If they haven't already decided on that, they definitely should, because it helps with, being able to depict your defense around that. So guys like the next one we're going to talk about in Jaylen Jones, being that number 2 outside corner, can really thrive in a system where he's not having to be picked on by the best wide receiver on the team when he's not the best corner on the team. Now, I mean, Cody, you brought this up the other day that you thought, could there be a position battle between Jaylen Jones and, JuJu Brents, who's looking to, come back and take his spot back? Justin Wally, who they just drafted. He was the surprise pick of the draft for the Indianapolis Colts. In that 3rd round, nobody expected us to take a cornerback that early, and they did. And we've heard nothing but good things about him since being here. And obviously, Samuel Womack, who is still on this roster too, who played a decent chunk last year and, actually played relatively well at times for the Indianapolis Colts. So you said this position, at least this number 2 position, is not a guarantee for Jaylen Jones. But assuming Jaylen Jones is the guy to win the job as of right now, what do you feel from him going into this year?
Yeah, I think you said a lot of kind of what I was thinking, and I'll specify it by saying this. I don't think it's 100% right now, because obviously a lot can change. But I think if you were to ask me right now who has a number 2 outside corner, I would say Jaylen Jones. I think he has the inside track right now. It's his job to lose right now, but there are some young guys here that I think are hungry as well to prove themselves and to get some snaps, because there's only so many positions out there. So, but I do think we will obviously see a lot more DBs in Lou Anarumo's scheme. He's already talked about that to a pretty good degree. But regardless of that, I think that number 2 outside corner, absolutely. I have Jaylen Jones as that guy right now. And you're right. In the last couple of years, I mean, we didn't think that was going to be the case his rookie year. But because of some of the injuries and some of the other issues, he was pretty much the number 1 outside corner for the majority of the season. And last year, the same way, because JuJu Brents was injured more often than he's been healthy and on the field. So Jaylen Jones, trial by fire, and I think he's come out pretty good, all things considered. But he has to, like you said, he's had to go against the number 1 corner or the number 1 wide receiver on the team. He has had to be that guy. Has he been great? He hasn't been locked down, but I think he's been solid. And I think that's what you're looking for in a number 2 outside corner. And again, this kid's only 23 years old. So it's not like he's, one of those older. He was a young rookie coming out of that 2023 class. So I think he still has room for growth this year. And obviously, with all the guys you brought in and the huge emphasis you put on the defensive backs, with getting guys like Chris Hewitt in the building, I think those sorts of things, those are going to help players like Jaylen Jones to not have to be the number one guy, but also grow in their game and become a better corner, all things considered, because we know he has the talent and the ability to do so. And now in a scheme and a defense that's really focused on helping out and growing these DBs, I think he has a chance here, Derek. But I'm excited to see him now in kind of that number 2 role, because I think he personally, Derek, if he does win the job, I think he can be in contention for one of the best number 2 outside corners in the NFL. I really do.
It'll be definitely great to see. I mean, again, outside of him getting picked on by Devontae Adams and Mike Evans, of all people, right? Like, he's looked good at times during these couple of seasons that he's been there. So certainly hope that he will continue to do that. And it's been one of the few really surprising picks, because again, he was a 7th round pick. You didn't really expect much from Jaylen Jones. You thought this was probably going to be a camp body, but of course, I don't remember which scout it was that stuck his neck out for wanting to get Jaylen Jones, but Ballard consistently gives him credit, even to this day, for choosing Jaylen Jones, and Ballard very much appreciates him for making the case for Jaylen Jones, because he's done a lot of great things. And of course, talking about the other starting corner here, and that's Kenny Moore, got re-signed back in 2024. So, we have him sticking around for a couple more years here. And I mean, Cody, what's not to like about what Kenny Moore has done? He's been a tremendously available player. He's been maybe one of the best, if not the best, defensive player for the Indianapolis Colts over the last 5 years, outside of DeForest Buckner and, before, Leonard ended up having his injury problems. Kenny Moore's been one of the best defensive players we've had recently. And he's been a lot more of a vocal guy recently too. He was one of the guys that called out some of the BS on the defense that was happening last year. So, good on him being, more of that vocal guy on this team. So give me your thoughts on Kenny Moore and, what he's looking like. He's another one of those veterans out there.
Yeah, I love his story. I love how he basically, came from this small school, undrafted guy, and the Colts gave him a chance back in 2017. And I just have loved his story ever since. It's just been so cool to see his ascension into, like you said, one of, if not the best slot corners in football. And, like we said, there's been a lot of turnover and a lot of crazy stuff that's happened since he was originally brought into the Colts. I mean, multiple coaching staffs, all this kind of stuff that's changed, but Kenny Moore has stayed very consistent, and he can do a little bit of everything. And the crazy thing is, he's not that tall, but his arms are extremely long, and he's just very unique in those ways, and very sound tackler. I really do hope the Colts send him on some more blitzes this year, because you remember back in the day when the Colts would send Kenny Moore on some blitzes, it'd be very effective. And I just feel like under Gus Bradley, they really got away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope they bring that back in some capacity, because Kenny Moore is one of the best splitting corners in the NFL. And I just feel like the Colts kind of had that, and they never did anything with it under Bradley.
With Lou Anarumo being there now, I certainly hope that is the case, right? We've always claimed that Lou Anarumo could be a lot more aggressive with his defense, and that could very well be a thing, because you're right. Back in 2019, 2020, you saw a lot of that. And that was obviously back when Eberflus was there, right? And, we saw, it wasn't like they did it a lot, but they did it on occasion, and it worked. It messed a lot of people up. And now, too, with the kind of defense that you have, you're going to put more corners on the field a lot more times. And you have Charvarius Ward out there now. You have Cam Bynum out there now. You have more confidence in the guys that can play man, and you feel like you can do that type of thing with Kenny Moore now, because you have guys behind him that are going to get the job done a lot more frequently than what they could before.
Well, basketball season may be over, but the action doesn't stop on Prize Picks because baseball is just heating up. Step up to the plate with Prize Picks to add your favorite baseball players to your lineup. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, make your call with more or less and play for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value to your lineups. Think Shohei Ohtani will get more than one home run this week? Juan Soto for more than one hit? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this baseball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. I personally believe that Ohtani will do that. So I am going to lock in Shohei Ohtani here for at 0.5 hits. I'm going to hit the over here. I'm going to go more for him. And guys, that's just a snippet of all the different things on the board here that you can choose. You can go less or more on. You just keep scrolling down. You see just so many things that you can bet on. And also you can look at your lineups, your promotions, all that stuff here on Prize Picks for you. Download the app today and use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use that code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Yeah, there's a lot more trust back there than you've had the last couple of years because you actually have some guys who know what they're doing and aren't these young guys you're throwing in and saying, all right, good luck, sink or swim. That's kind of what it felt like you did the last 2 years and have very, very mixed results. And then you mentioned some of the other guys already, but you have JuJu Brents who, at this time last year, everybody's talking about him being the number one outside corner. And all of a sudden, Derek, he's in a situation where he may not even be the number 2 outside corner. So he definitely has a lot to prove this year. He's been injured a lot, and that's been the biggest issue with him. You have Sam Womack, who you mentioned, and then you have Justin Wally, who you drafted with pretty significant draft capital in that 3rd round this year. So what are your thoughts on all these defensive backs? Because it feels like just like the defensive end position that we talked about, this group is just so full of talent across the board. You got your veterans, you got your young guys, but there's talent galore with this group.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's keep moving along here. We have a couple more guys that we need to talk about. And we'll talk here first about Samuel Womack III. So Womack came in at, I think it was week 2 of the NFL season last year. Obviously, when JuJu Brents went down, Chris Ballard had to fill a hole somewhere, and he had to bring in some extra guys. And Womack from the get-go, Cody, was doing some great things. And I think, honestly, it may be probably the best in-season move that Ballard has done, at least on the defensive side in his entire tenure in Indy. I mean, to be completely honest with you, because there were times during that season when Womack was shutting down everyone on his side. Like, the teams didn't want to throw to him because he was literally forcing a 33% completion percentage on his side, and his PFF grade was he was one of the highest PFF grades, and the passing grade when throwing his direction was like a 55 or something. So, like, nobody wanted to throw at him for, half the season. And then people started catching on a little bit. But when he first came in, I mean, he was playing like his hair was on fire, bro. So, I mean, ultimately, you do wonder what kind of time he's going to get this year. But obviously was in San Francisco for a little bit there. I think has some familiarity with Charvarius Ward, at least a little bit. So what do you expect from Womack this year, and how much playing time do you think he gets?
It's so tough, man, because like you said, there's so many guys that are in here. I hope they find a way to get him on the field because I really liked what he did last year. So this is, according to PFF, he was actually the 38th best corner out of 222 qualified corners last year. So he was pretty good. He was a top 40 corner last year for a waiver claim. I mean, of all things. So I'll take that, man. Like, I'll take that. He's a solid guy. He really is. He's a solid corner that showed glimpses to be pretty good last year. That's why, Derek, I'm not completely writing him off to potentially compete for some playing time because he was really good last year. Now, how will the scheme kind of, factor into that with him? I'm not entirely sure, but I do know this. Samuel Womack was such a surprise last year. I mean, frankly, let's call it what it is. The Colts got lucky that he panned out the way that he did last year. But I'm really just hopeful that he gets some sort of playing time this year. I hope they find ways to get him on the field because I think he's shown that he can, at the worst, be a average corner, and at the best, he can be a really, really good corner. And those guys, sometimes you get lucky, but I think the Colts did with Samuel Womack. So I'm excited to see him here, in Lou Anarumo's scheme and what that means, all things considered, because I thought all things considered, he played pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And then since I brought the name up, might as well bring him up next, and that's JuJu Brents, who again was drafted in the second round of the 2023 draft. Was hurt originally when he got to the team. Didn't get to do much in training camp. We didn't really see him until week 2 or week 3 of the 2023 season. But he went out there, and for about 6 weeks, Cody, he was playing some great football, was making plays. We remember that Ravens game where he had a couple pass deflections and had that forced fumble that changed the tide of the game where, the Colts were able to win that one. In retrospect, probably because of that move that he did was helpful. So, we've seen him do some great things. And then obviously this last year played for a quarter of last year and then went down with a serious injury and then didn't get to play until the final game of the season, and in which he got hurt again in the first quarter of that game and proceeded to not play the rest of it. So 2024, you could just scrap it from JuJu Brents' memory at this point. But ultimately, Cody, again, it's been the issue with JuJu is that we know he's got the talent. Just ultimately, is he reliable enough to stay on the field for any significant amount of time?
The answer through 2 seasons would be a resounding no. He has not been. But there's always another year, and he does, like, you're right. He does have the talent. I mean, he was the number 1 outside corner. He does have the talent to do it. But the problem is he just hasn't been healthy enough to play a whole season. Just like Anthony Richardson. He hasn't played a full season in his 2 full NFL seasons. He hasn't played. He's missed about as much time, it's probably more time, honestly, than he's played so far. So that's definitely a problem, no doubt about that. But yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful, Derek. I have this optimism, but it's cautious optimism with a guy like JuJu Brents. Because like you said, like he can play football and he can play at a good level, but he's got to be on the field in order to do that, right? I will be curious, like, this is something that just came to my mind, and maybe this is just a stupid idea, but could he potentially, play a little bit of safety? I don't know the answer to that, but the physical tools could suggest maybe, especially with how deep this group is. But again, maybe he wins a number 2 outside corner and it's not even a conversation. But, if he is sitting there not getting playing time, is that an option? I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of playing time a lot of these guys get, because if you're going to be in a situation where you could have Cody, like, honestly, there could be some moments where he might have like 6 secondary guys out there at any point, right? Like, there could be some situations where Lou Anarumo has 6, could potentially even be 7 if there's going to be a pass play that happens. I mean, who knows what these guys' job responsibilities are going to be, right? I mean,
right.
They could still be technically called corners, but, a guy like JuJu Brents that has that long range and that attack ability, he could play in a safety position type of way in some aspects. You have no idea. So, it really is going to come down to that. And like I said, it's going to be fun to watch this defense and how different it looks this year. This is the first time in I don't know how long, Cody, that we've had a defensive coordinator that refuses to play cover 2 or cover 3 zone 90% of the time, right? It's going to be so much different. Okay, so a couple more names here. Justin Wally, who, again, as I mentioned in another video when we talked about, we were talking about guys that got drafted this year, a guy that, Cody, I mean, you and I were both like, wait, who? When we first saw the reaction of him getting drafted, I hadn't heard the name before. And we sat back and, at first everybody's reaction, like, what the heck? What are we doing? But obviously, you took this guy for a reason that high up. And it was in a position you didn't need, but they felt that they weren't going to get this guy in the next round. So they took a shot in the dark and went and got somebody who they figured that they weren't going to be able to wait on. And, it's so far it's worked out because people have said that Justin Wally has been one of the most impressive new guys that's come in and, has looked very good. And his role in this defense is still not definitively known yet. Originally, we heard people say he could be a nickel behind Kenny, but then we've heard people say he's playing outside corner, and who knows what his role is going to be right now, Cody. But talk to me about Wally and how you feel about him going into training camp. Might be one of the most interesting names to watch.
Yeah, obviously, this was a guy that the Colts collectively, their defensive staff, they got together and they said, this is a guy that we want on our team. I believe it was with the next pick where Ballard said, this is the one guy, if we don't get him, I'm going to be upset. I believe they were talking about Justin Wally, right, which shows you how much they believe this kid can be an absolute stud. And, like we said, you emphasize the DB position all offseason. You brought in all these guys who are their expertise is in defensive backs, right? You brought in probably the best developer of defensive backs, who's now your defensive back coach. And we saw what he did with the Baltimore Ravens over the years. And they obviously identified this kid and they loved him enough to be willing to take the flack when people said, you overdrafted him, right? People were saying that. You overdrafted him. He was a day 3 pick, whatever. But obviously the Colts felt different. They felt different enough to take him, like we said, with a pretty significant pick in round 3 when there was other positions that we were clamoring for.
Yep.
They decided, no, this kid's worth it. And I don't know what his role is going to be right away, right? Is he more of a special teams guy right away? Maybe. I mean, that might be what he has to be because obviously not all these guys can be on the field at the same time. But there's a little bit of curiosity with me because he is the first corner outside of obviously Charvarius Ward that the Colts brought in of significance. They identified and they said, we want this guy in our defense. That's intriguing to me because what does that look like? Does he have some sort of upper leg with some of these guys? I don't know. Obviously, he's going to have to earn it. They'll play the best players out there. But this is a Lou Anarumo pick. Not really any of the other guys that are Lou Anarumo picks. So there's a little bit of curiosity in me, like, could this kid play more than maybe we are thinking right away? I don't know the answer to that because there's a lot of guys like we've talked about. And there's even a couple other guys as well that could potentially factor in some way. But yeah, I love Justin Wally as a prospect, and I do think he has the potential to be a really good corner with this team. And we'll just have to see what his role is because it's hard to say right now with how many players they have at this position. It's a logjam, man. It absolutely is a logjam at this position. So I wish Justin Wally would get some playing time, and maybe he will end up getting playing time, but I don't know, man. It's hard to see it right now. It's just hard to see it, but anything can happen. Obviously, injuries happen and other things go on. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, 100%. As far as the rest of these corners go, I know we talked about Corey Ballantyne, who, again, will likely be a special teams guy, probably at the most, unless the cornerback depth gets tested with injury. So, that'd really be one of the only ways that I would see him getting any kind of significant time, unless you disagree with that notion.
No, I mean, going back to what I said just with JuJu Brents, like, I'm just so curious because obviously we've seen Colts haven't done anything at safety outside of Cam Bynum, but they have all these corners. So could it look different where they're technically a safety, but they're still playing, some snaps? Like, could that be a guy like Corey Ballantyne, for example, where he could play, he's listed as a corner, but he plays a little bit of everything? I don't know. But just more of a depth guy maybe in that safety room, but just really the defensive backs on the field. So I don't know. Like you said, special teams, but my gosh, you got so many guys already. And who are you going to cut? Is it going to be Corey Ballantyne? I mean, special teams matters too. So this is just a puzzling position group for me because I truly don't know how it's going to play out. I could see so many scenarios happening with this cornerback room. I really could. And I think I'd be happy with virtually all of them, honestly. There's so many guys in here that I think have upside to be quality starters or really, really good corners. So Corey Ballantyne, I don't know. Will the numbers game play for him, or will the Colts keep a lot more DBs than maybe we're thinking? More corners, if you will. Will they? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's going to do it for this one, guys. That is the cornerback room, and obviously we will continue to keep an eye on this group because outside of Charvarius Ward and potentially Jaylen Jones and obviously Kenny Moore and nickel, anyone outside of those guys, it's up in the air how this goes for them this year and what all is in store for them. It's really going to come down to Lou Anarumo and how his defense plays out, and if any of these guys deal with injuries before the season starts or if somebody steps up in a big way. But that's going to do it for this one. Let us know your thoughts on this group. Thank you guys so much. And as always, go Colts.